about how it gives Lewis Dodd a chance to stake his claim to have the position as his own next year. So
I think that's a fairly clear hint, isn't it?
yeah. Sure, let's move into the Women's Super League, because there was if the World Cup wasn't, if the World Cup stuff hadn't happened, this probably would have been our lead story this week.
It would. So the Betfred Women's Super League is to bring forward its scheduled mid-season break before returning as planned with a two-tier competition format from Sunday the 8th of August. Clubs have unanimously agreed with the RFL to cancel this week's final round of Phase 1 fixtures, allowing squads an immediate circuit break from the challenges presented by positive COVID-19 tests, self-isolations and injuries. On resumption, the top 5 teams, Leeds, St Helens, Wigan, York and Castleford, will begin their quest for a place in the grand final. Featherstone Rovers, Huddersfield Giants, Warrington Wolves, Bradford Bulls and Wakefield Trinity will contest the Super League Shield, with both finals scheduled for Sunday the 10th of October, before Saints play and win the next grand final. At Emerald Headley Stadium in Leeds. Fixtures, including details of the midweek games and broadcast and streaming arrangements, will be announced in due course. England training sessions and reserve weekends for any postponements will be accommodated within the schedule.
Yeah, so it's a big change. I think part of the reason why they've maybe looked at making a change as well is, as well as possibly allowing some more flexibility around any COVID positives that might impact fixtures from going ahead, or lack of availability of doctors, which has been a problem as well recently. It allows some flexibility, doesn't it? With a team having a free week in this 5. It also acknowledges the fact that York have made those significant early season signings and have now made this a top 5. So in a legitimate top 5 where you've got 5 competitive sides, whereas earlier on when the season started, when the picture was drawn up, you had 4 competitive sides and you wanted those 4 to be playing against each other. This way it still means that not all of the, but the majority of the England hopefuls will be playing against each other for those 5 sides, and none of them have to miss out on that. And none of them will be dropping into the weaker part of the draw where it's going to be, less intense, shall we say? So,
Yes.
So I think it's a positive, but it's it's one of you don't know whether to say, oh, they're just ripping it up and starting it again and making it up as they go along, or if they're being sensible and flexible and creating a solution out of a problem. It's a bit of both.
Probably both. Probably both, Mark. Probably both.
But if it helps get our women's team prepared better for the World Cup, then I'm all for the changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are being pragmatic about how they're doing it. It still doesn't look great. It's not a great look, is it, to be messing around with formats and rescheduling the comp and so on and so forth mid-season. But anyway, we are where we are.
Yeah,
you'd hate to.
And we're still we're talking, although it's the flagship competition in the women's game, and the Super League South hasn't been affected by any of these changes with that competition that started last month. It's still an amateur game, isn't it? It's still, so I think you still have to be a little bit more fluid with it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Into the Championship, where London Broncos have been deducted 2 competition points for failing to fulfil their Betfred Championship away fixture with Toulouse in April. The RFL says the Broncos have accepted the sanction and also agreed to make a financial contribution to offset the expenses Toulouse incurred as a result of the cancellation. I mean, do you think this comes off the back of some of the criticisms around of people thinking people might be throwing games or abandoning games, or picking and choosing what games they play and that sort of thing? And this is a strong message from the RFL compliance department that they won't accept this, because the London Broncos clearly could have fulfilled this fixture and chose not to fulfill a fixture that they were more than likely to lose, given Toulouse's standing this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's the case or not. I mean, sometimes the disciplinary bodies and so on of the RFL move quite slowly. So it could just be that this is exactly what would have happened anyway if it had just been a one-off and so on. However, I think it performs that very useful service, Mark, because whilst we're all getting fed up of COVID cancellations, we don't want to see fixtures not. We've got enough problems without seeing fixtures not being fulfilled when they could have been fulfilled. Useful service to the sport to remind people that whilst we're subject to the pingdemic that every other part of society is, when fixtures can be fulfilled, they have to be fulfilled. We can't pick and choose. When we don't want to play because it's just not convenient, or even worse, because tactically it's going to provide some sort of strategic advantage as we come towards the decisive part of the season. So I think it provides a useful service. I think we need to think a little bit about what we're going to do with the pinging going on. I mean, we're not far from the August 16th change for people that have been double vaccinated. I don't know to what extent the government have decided how we have to respond to positive cases and isolations, and how much of that is our own sort of methodologies following government advice. But I think we need to think hard about what we want to do going forward and whether we can move to a test and release approach to try and get more games on, because as things stand, the season's getting very, very disjointed. And whilst I, very much enjoy watching the games that I can see on the TV, although, there wasn't much on the TV this weekend, was there? With the Lions dominating everything, Sky seemed to have decided not to show any games basically on the TV over the weekend. So there wasn't much to view, but certainly some of the quality of it looks, or at least the scorelines look exciting. Although whether the fact that many teams are missing weeks at a time and then having to come back and play is starting to affect quality. I'm not quite sure. What do you think, Mark?
I having watched several games in the flesh recently, as well as ones on telly, I think quality is being affected, but I don't think that's necessarily just because of teams not being able to play games because of COVID. I think it's also because of the crazy fixture list that we came up with before the season started. But London punished, and like you say, served as a reminder to everyone else. And I do think you make a really good point about whether they can come up with a different solution. Certainly around the test and trace app, because it's not actually a legal requirement to isolate off that. So they could think of a different methodology around that one, regarding what you're saying, the pingdemic. But I think, try to be more flexible. It might be an option, although we're not quite going to be classed as essential workers in rugby league to fit into some of these government pilot schemes. But they love a test event of some sort or another, don't they, the government right now? Anyway, a couple of other lines from the Championship. York prop James Green has announced that he will retire at the end of the season so he can fully focus on work commitments. The 30-year-old has made more than 150 career appearances for Hull KR, Leigh, Castleford, Bradford and York. He came through the ranks at Hull KR and played 81 games for the club between 2012 and 2016. He was part of that run to Wembley in 2015 but missed the final. He will finish the rest of the Championship season with York before hanging up his boots to focus on his own business as a mortgage advisor. So good luck to him there. And Featherstone have announced the signing of French pop Gadwin Springer for the remainder of the 2021 season. The 28-year-old was a member of the CAS squad that lifted the League Leaders Shield back in 2017. He's also featured for Catalans, Toronto and Halifax, where he's most recently been at. So yeah, they're obviously bolstering their forward pack for... Maybe they want someone who can speak French, who can get into the minds of the Toulouse side.
Could be. Hunslet have appointed Alan Kilshaw as their new head coach. Kilshaw, 38, takes over the reins with immediate effect. He succeeds Gary Thornton, with whom the Betfred League One outfit parted company last week. A product of the St Helens Junior Academy system, he spent several seasons with the Warrington Wolves Youth Development Department and coached England Youth and Academy from 2011 to 2013. Kilshaw also coached in Australia with Serena Crocodiles and as assistant coach with Mackay Cutters in the Queensland Cup. He joined Rochdale Hornets as head coach in 2016, achieving promotion from League One in his first season with a famous victory against Toulouse. He left the Hornets at the end of 2018. It's an interesting appointment.
Certainly, if they're planning on bringing some young players through, I think he's well placed to support with that. So we'll see. Barrow have announced that winger Shane Toll has signed a new 3-year deal with the club. Toll, who's 25, is a product of Ulverston, the club, and joined the Raiders in 2015. He's a Scottish international, earning 3 caps for the Bravehearts and was named in their squad for the 2017 World Cup.
And finally,
yep,
International Rugby League Chair Troy Grant, who's having a busy week, says getting Rugby League Nines in the Olympics in time for Brisbane 2032 is a clear goal. The Australian city was selected as host for the 2032 Games by the International Olympic Committee, having previously been named as the preferred bidder. And with plans to expand the World Nine circuit, which saw World Cup played in Australia in 2019, Grant wants to press ahead with gaining IOC recognition in time for the 2032 Games.
I think that would be a positive, wouldn't it, for Rugby League? I think if they were going to try and add a Australian-based sport, wouldn't the Summer Olympics look at their summer sport and think of some sort of version of limited overs cricket? But I'd certainly love it if Rugby League got greater recognition. It's already had sort of affiliate recognition, hasn't it, with the Commonwealth Games, and looking to be more involved there. So, look, the more Rugby League's played and seen by the more people, the happier we are.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Okay, shout out to BBC Sport Rugby League page, totalrl.com and loverugbyleague.com for providing the news stories for us to comment on. I think we pulled up one from St Helens Star there as well, when in the middle, as they broke the Farge news before we got it elsewhere. Thanks everyone who dropped their fan views in, particularly obviously on the main story. That's dominated that section and dominated the show. I don't think we'll talk about anything else for as long as we talked about that. Hopefully we covered all angles and people understand our disappointment and frustration with it. But we will move on from the news into the match reviews.
So let's move on to the match reviews. This is Super League round 15, kind of, plus one from round 13. I'm sure we're going to have even longer sentences than that, introducing the rounds as we go forward. There's some catch-ups from different rounds at different times. So in the first game, it was Huddersfield versus Hull FC. It was refereed by Chris Kendall. It was 22-16 to Huddersfield at half-time and finished 40 points to 26 in front of a crowd of 3,699. Stats, the teams, although they made 2 more errors, Huddersfield also had more metres at 1.1 metre per carry, better average gain, and 3 more clean breaks. They were also stronger defensively with a 6.1% better team tackle success rate. For the winners, Jerry McGilvray, 4 tries, 8 tackleables, 200 metres, 2 clean breaks. That's a fairly good stat line. Luke Yates, 1 try, 45 tackles and 146 metres, going both ways. Ash Golding, 1 try assist, 101 metres, and Nate try and 44 tackles. For the losers, mate Danny Horton, 1 try assist, 56 tackles, and it says 10 metres.
No, 10